we have seen today from the EU. And here I would like just to mention that Switzerland voted finally 20 years thereafter to follow this famous Primarolo list, which was there in the air for being voted upon in Switzerland. And we failed 2 times, and now the 3rd time we, I think, passed this hurdle. And as a consequence of which all these cantonal special tax regimes, they all abolished and all gone and over with. And Switzerland will have a new tax system effective as of January 1st, 2020. And in that context, and it has been mentioned here several times, obviously the IP box will have a paramount importance. And I think with that, we should be able to get over this gray list from the EU finally. And I think we did our part, and I hope it should be respected. Now, if we come a little bit closer to my presentation here, I think that I will take back the whole discussion a step further, because I think Rodrigo, he already explained what in a way is the future where we have to go. And I'm looking a little bit from a distance point of view, where sort of I listened a little bit to what the OECD says. I did read some American decisions, some US state tax decisions, and come back to the digital economy as such. And I would like to underline some tax policy issues. What does it mean to tax a digital economy? US state taxes, we have example, recent developments, and finally possible solutions. So what are we here really talking about? The international tax system is well balanced, but geared to the needs of we'll call quote unquote brick and mortar economy, which in the age of digitalization can no longer satisfy the fiscal needs of source countries. We are therefore on the verge of a change in paradigms, which will have a significant impact on existing tax structures of this world. And obviously the starting point, and this has already been pointed out today, is BEPS action number 1. And in that context, I would assume that the OECD has the task to define a global tax system which is adapted to digital economies. And if we look at the whole thing de lege lata, we can see that Article 3 of the Double Taxation Convention, dated October 31st, 1925, this is not a spelling error, really it is October 31st, 1925. This was, if not the first, so one of the first double taxation agreements done in this world. The German Reich and Italy defined a permanent establishment as a fixed place of business in which the activity of the enterprise is, bracket open, completely or partially, bracket close, carried on. This definition corresponds almost literally to the one used in Article 5, Para 1 of the OECD Model Convention, version November 21st, 2017. This, to my mind, is the latest version. This results in an international, this October 31st order, this results in an international order of double taxation convention, which clearly favors states of residence. Here I have just, for purposes of illustrating what I'm saying, a parent company in a residence country, and I have in the source country, I have a subsidiary, I have a permanent establishment, or on the other side, a dependent agent, which habitually is concluding contracts on behalf of the parent company, according to Article 5, Para 5 of the OECD Model Convention. Now, if we look a little bit what the basic assumptions of this new system will be, So first of all, who will be in charge? And I think there clearly the OECD has the lead, because the OECD can say, I am acting on behalf of the G20. The EU obviously, and we have seen and we'll see also a little bit if we go on, has also some kind of foot in this thing. And last but not least, Christine Lagarde in the Financial Times of March 11, 2019, expressed the wish that really she should be doing it, and the IMF should be in charge of looking for the new system, which I think is absolutely wrong. Also, to me, it is clear that the OECD is the leader here, and it should develop a system which, to my mind, should be similar to the OECD Model Convention, which establishes, again, and we have heard that before today, a level playing field, including the OECD, including the USA, including the BRIC country, including the European Union, and including developing countries, so that really for everybody we have the same and identical conditions. Otherwise, I'm not sure that here will come to an end and we'll find a system that really works. Now, that implies furthermore that we have to shift the focus really from the residence country. We have to shift the focus more and so to the source countries. And in this context, we should note that the US is the single biggest market for e-products and e-services, which makes a source country taxation more attractive than what I would call here the double Irish Dutch sandwich. And I made a slide on that one. Obviously, you understand this much better than I am. And I think this system which the US has now in place as a residence country is not really helpful, because from what I understand how this famous sandwich works, on the one side you have these royalties which are not taxed and exempted according to the EU Directive 203/49/EC, and on the other hand the bulk of the profits which this famous double sandwich produces ends up somewhere in Bermuda. And in Bermuda it is not taxed, so it is neither taxed in Bermuda nor in the United States nor in Ireland. And that's why the United States also expressed a lot of interest in this source country taxation. And it also said and mentioned that here really the EU, that here really the OECD is on the right way how to implement a new system. And the digital economy will be taxed within the framework of BEPS Section 1, and it will be a focus on source country. And then we have somehow contradicting and a little bit problematic sayings of Pascal Saint-Amand, who said that we have no ring fencing of digital economy, and he said there is no such thing as digital companies. On the other hand, I think it is clear to me that the mom and papa grocery store is not a digital enterprise. And so I'm not sure that we can have one system for everybody. And eventually we could have two systems, one for digital companies and one for the others. And what are we looking for? And this, I think, is a crucial importance, and this is discussed widely within academics. Are we having a consumption or are we having an income tax? And really the problem to my mind is that in case of an income tax, I'm not sure, and it seems, and this I have heard some voices, that the arm's length principle which we have for the time being and for the last God knows how many years sort of applied as a holy grail, would then no longer be applicable, and this would then mean that the arm's length system would have to be replaced by apportionment methods, and this really, to my mind, is a big hurdle in the context of implementing here an income tax. And will there be a minimum corporate income tax imposed by various countries? And as I said, the difficulty of changing the method. And here some learned voice said this is a daunting thing to implement, not really easy. Now, the OECD, where am I? Am I going forwards, backwards? Oh. Shall I say? Sorry.
Like this. I prefer the keyboard. I think it's 12 or.
Yes. So, really, the OECD system, as I understand it, is that they have a two-level approach. The first approach is they say that, yes, there will be a focus on source country, and that is one level. And on the second level, to implement this system, they will have then these secondary assumptions, which means BEPS actions 2 to 13. And we have no time here to go through this BEPS action plan. I just may remind you, obviously, that BEPS action 14 refers to the peer review, so we cannot have anything out of that. And BEPS action 15 focuses on the famous MLI, and we cannot have anything to do with that. So really, BEPS action 2 to 13 should be supporting that new source tax approach. Maybe I press here. Is that safer? No. No, 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 no. And really transacted problem is that here we come to the point where one has to transact business without having a fixed place of business in the source country. And to my mind, goods which are being ordered online and which are always physically delivered to the other state, that is one thing, also the email order business. And the second thing is really services which are ordered electronically and which are delivered electronically to the other country, such as online access to databases, download of programs, ebook, Airbnb, etc., etc. I'm no really a specialist on all these electronical possibilities, but I try to listen here some of them. And there is no exhaustive view, because how about intermediate digital tools which are being used to improve a production process, 3D design tools? So all this is an open-ended issue which cannot be clearly said, here we have black and here we have white. And obviously, the one who, to my mind, looked a little bit apart, obviously from Chile, the one who looked a little bit at this whole system, how does it work if we have no physical presence in the other state, is the United States, and there it's a matter of state taxes. So we are not talking about the U.S. federal tax, we're talking about the U.S. state taxes, so the 50 and some which they have over there. And this then compared to a European-style VAT, we would say that we have a multi-stage tax, and the U.S. state tax is a single state tax. It's sort of a system which was applied before we had the VAT in Europe. For Swiss purposes, we had the famous WUST, Warenumsatzsteuer, which was exactly the kind of tax which nowadays still exists in the United States. And obviously everybody's also aware that in the United States, to change to a tax system which would be similar or corresponding to a European-style VAT tax, as my friend David Rosenblum would say, this is a non-starter. Also, there is no way that we could convince a U.S. Congress to adopt a VAT in the United States. And there are basically two cases, and one of them was decided in 1992, which is the Quill Corporation versus North Dakota, where sort of you had a warehouse for all states in the U.S., which was situated in North Sioux City, Nebraska, and this one had no physical presence in the other state. And the other one, you would have a source tax on a company which was registered in South Sioux City, South Dakota, and supposedly they had a small warehouse where they had one employee, and the other one had a big warehouse where they had hundreds of employees. And the Quill Corporation clearly says that you need a physical presence in the other state in order to be subject to the sales tax. Those who are not physically present in the source state are not subject to tax, and those who are physically present within a state, bracket open, by maintaining a mini warehouse within that state are subject to tax. Now, this was what the United States Supreme Court had enforced until there was this famous decision which came about a year ago, which is South Dakota versus Wayfair Inc. Here the page I left open. I think it will be reported in that specific volume, but the page is not known yet. And here it was said that while nexus rules are clearly necessary, the court should focus on rules that are appropriate to the 21st century, not to the 19th. Each year, the physical presence rule, as it was spelled out in Quill, becomes further removed from economic reality and results in significant revenue losses to the states. Quill created an inefficient online sales tax loophole that gives out-of-state businesses an advantage. It has long been settled, the court said, in Wayfair, that the sale of goods or services have a sufficient nexus to the states in which the sale is consummated to be treated as a local transaction taxable by that state. So what we have seen here is somehow, and again, apart from the US, which somehow has here implemented an nexus approach, if we look at what happens in Europe, I call this everybody can participate. In German, we would say eine Jekami-Methode, and that is really rather the contrary to a global approach, where the OECD is addressing the tax challenges of the digital economy and promises a final report in 2020. And on March 12th, and what I understand, and all of you know much better about EU tax law than I do, the EU has finally rejected the introduction of a digital consumption tax proposed by Germany, France, but opposed by Denmark, Sweden, Estonia, and Ireland, amounting to 3% on online advertising. Now, this then led to sort of everybody does by himself. France introduced a 3% tax. France introduced a 3% tax on this famous Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. Austria introduced a 5% tax, and all this sort of means that Czech Republic introduced a tax of 7%. Poland wants to do something. We have heard from Rodrigo that Chile has a 19% tax, and somehow I think that all this should be streamlined, and we should indeed have a global system, and we should have the same conditions for everybody. As to whether this is possible, God knows. Now, what did Switzerland do? And we have heard that some small parcel exception was also discussed in the example of Chile. effective January 1st, 2019, Switzerland imposes a VAT registration on all foreign mail order houses importing goods to Switzerland. It exempts a overall turnover of 100,000 or deliveries of less or equal to Swiss francs 5, to which you can add Swiss francs 50, sorry, this is a mistake. Swiss francs 50, to which you can add then the VAT, which is present in Switzerland much lower than in all other European countries, 7.7%. So you have an exemption of 53.85 for the time being. Everything on and above is now subject to tax. And I think if we really compare a little bit the situations, then we have on the one side an income tax, and here I've already mentioned this may be a daunting thing to implement because the corporate income tax implies a formulary apportionment, and this makes the whole thing very difficult. On the other hand, if you have a user tax style of VAT, goods or services tax, you could simply tax the import on the supply of e-services. This would be a consumption tax, and this would by definition not be possible to apply any kind of formulary apportionment there. And so maybe I think that all solutions which look a little bit in direction of the consumption tax are easier to implement than the solutions which go in the direction of the income tax. And as I said here, so far, the only one arm's length method, if we would impose an income tax, would no longer be able to survive. It would have formally apportionment based on sales, payroll, and assets. So far, in the context of US state taxes, I think here we then would end up on obviously a system which only focuses on sales tax, but at least here for the time being, they have this three-prong formula, but that is only particularly used for the US state taxes. And formally apportionment is well known in Swiss intercantonal tax conflicts. Also here we go back to the years 50 and 60 and 70. There is an indirect tax allocation based on auxiliary factors. We call that in German eine quotenmäßig indirekte Methode. And in this context, we have implemented in the old and the existing system what is called a praecipum, which is a special sort of favorable tax in form of the residence countries. And here maybe something, but this is just an idea of Altenburger, maybe something could be gained if you have the praecipum in favor of the source country. And really the thing is, would the formally apportionment become a replacement, or will it be used on a complementary basis? This discussion is still open. Now, is formally apportionment compatible with existing double taxation treaties? This is a major issue, and the one who did some studies in this field is famous Reuven S. Avi Ayona from University of Michigan, famous law school. And the OECD's transfer pricing guidelines incorporate the arm's length. Here there's a little typo. The arm's length method as outlined by Article 9, Para 1 OECD Model Convention. In Reuven S. Avi Ayona's 2007, this is already a few years old, study on the implementation of formally apportionment, the author expresses the following caveat, which seems a little bit strange under today's circumstances. He said there is one situation where existing treaties would prohibit the application of formally apportionment. based on sales, which is when a corporation is able to sell goods or provide services to a market without any kind of permanent establishment, directly or through an agent. This situation can arise in some cases of electronic commerce. So he made exactly for the subject matter we are discussing here, he said formally apportionment will not work and nobody knows exactly in which direction now we should go. And to my mind, and this seems to certainly important, there is no such thing as an e-good. Also the download of a e-book, and contrary what I have seen before, to my mind, the download of an e-book is always a service and not a good. And all services, including e-supplied services, are, at least that's the present VAT understanding, recipient taxable where the recipient resides. This is a general rule. And either the supplier is VAT registered in the source country, for example, Switzerland, or otherwise there is a reverse charge. And from this I would conclude and finally end up here by saying that we need a source country-based global tax system in which taxation of e-delivered services occurs despite there being no physical presence of the supplier in the source country. And to my mind, a VAT and good or sales tax seems much easier to implement, but taxation must be imposed on the supplier and not the user. Thus, I would favor a business-to-business VAT general sales tax, but disallowing the final stage, which is B2C taxation. And with this, I have ended. Thank you.
Can we suggest an American approach to formula apportionment?
Yes.
The issue that we have in Europe.
Yes. No, also we don't have it in Europe, but we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that's, as far as I understand, is the very same approach that we have in Switzerland, or probably the US copied your system, or vice versa. I don't know who went first.
But again, I think it will overthrow this entire arm's length system. And that is obviously a major, major hurdle, because then we really change everything.
Right.
Even Chile may then change some of its treaties.
Chile, I mean the treaty system.
Yes. Also, I don't think it is compatible with the treaty system as we have it.
Yeah, if you start revolutionizing it,
Yes,
system, then treaties have to follow as well.
Yes.
It's quite a long road indeed, in my view. Comments or feedback from the floor? This is the first paper on digital taxation. I think we are going to have another one, but not now, because now it's some minutes. How are you?
A very small, short remark. You mentioned the PE principle. I think there's even an older treaty between Prussia and Northern.
Okay, I said one of the first. I didn't say. Okay.
So I think that's the first.
Okay.
But even then, you see how all these.
But this is the only one I could get out of the internet so far. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now we will switch both with Samuele Volpe to another paper and to another language, actually, because we're going now to have a presentation in German. Most of the audience can speak German or understand it. But Samuele provided a summary of the paper in English, also in Italian, on the paper that I left on your desk. So it's going to be a good exercise for me, but also you can follow the highlights of the presentation from the paper that has been delivered entirely. Then we will move back to the digital taxation, I think, with the Unile, part 2 and part of the Toshankar later on.
Oh, okay, thank you. Ferrara brochure, das Institut auf einen Blick. I am the only student from Ferrara, and with German language, I have to speak this presentation, and I hope that you, Marco, improve your German language.
Definitely need it.
Okay.
You know that here in Ferrara we had probably the first research center, or the first on civil law between Germany and Italy with Professor Chan. He was a full professor in civil law. He did most of his studies in Germany, and he incorporated here the first research center of Dipartimento.
Okay. So, ich spreche über das spontane Informationsaustausch über Steuerruling und ist eine Analyse des Aktionsplans 5 des BEPS und die Auswirkungen für die Schweiz, für Switzerland. So, es gibt einige Fragen, die ich antworten werde, aber die Zeit geht und ich habe einen Zug zu nehmen, also gehe ich ein bisschen schneller. So, ich werde nicht ganz über das Projekt BEPS reden, aber das Aktionsplan 5 geht oder bezieht sich untereinander über die Informationsaustausch, also obligatorische, spontane Informationsaustausch. Also nicht viel spontan, also mehr obligatorisch. Und in diese Aktionsplan 5, man spricht über die Steuerruling und auch IP-Box und andere Sachen. Also ich kümmere mich über die Ruling. Es gibt eine Definition von OECD. Nach dem Projekt besteht ein Ruling aus alle Ratschläge, Auskünfte oder Zusicherungen einer Steuerbehörde gegenüber einer bestimmten Steuerpflichtigen oder einer bestimmten Gruppe von Steuerpflichtigen in Bezug auf deren Steuersituation, auf die sich der Steuerpflichtige bzw. die Gruppe von Steuerpflichtigen berufen kann. In English, ruling are any advice, information or undertaking provided by a tax authority to a specific taxpayer or group of taxpayer concerning their tax situation and, important, on which they are entitled to rely. Es gibt zwei Gruppen, Taxpayer-Specific Ruling, also ist ein steuerliches Vorabkommen zwischen den steuerpflichtigen Person und die Steuerbehörde, ist ein Advanced Tax Ruling. Und diese Informationen müssen ausgetauscht werden. Und dann es gibt noch die General Ruling und diese betreffen die Stellung der Steuerbehörde in Bezug auf Fragen wie die Auslegung der Gesetzgebung oder eine Verwaltungspraxis. Also normalerweise sind Kreisschreiben, wo Informationen von der Steuerbehörden an steuerpflichtigen Personen gegeben sind. Und diese müssen nicht ausgetauscht werden, weil nicht ein Specific Taxpayer beziehen. In der Schweiz kennen wir zwei Formen von Ruling. Eine ist formelle Ruling und andere Seite informelle Ruling. Also die formelle Ruling hängen von einer gesetzlichen Grundlage ab. Und finden wir diese formelle Ruling im Bereich der indirekten Steuer, also Verrechnungssteuer, Stempelabgabegesetz und Mehrwertsteuergesetz. Und auch in Quellensteuer. Diese formelle Ruling sind wichtig für den spontanes Veranlagungsverfahren, wo die steuerpflichtige Person seine Steuer selber bereit und dann bezahlt. Ich glaube, wie in Italien für die direkte Steuer ist Autodichiarazione. Und bei der informellen Rulings, diese sind wichtig für diese Bereich in Action Plans 5, weil betreffen die direkte Steuer. Also in der Schweiz, es gibt keine gesetzliche Grundlage für die direkte Steuer, um ein Ruling von der Steuerbehörde zu bekommen. Und diese ist ein Grund der gemischten Veranlagungsverfahren, wo es gibt eine Zusammenarbeit zwischen Steuerpflichtigen und Steuerbehörden bei der Festsetzung der Steuer. Also sie arbeiten zusammen, um der Steuer genau zu beziffern. So, es fehlt eine gesetzliche Grundlage für die Ruling, aber es sich eine langjährige Bundesgerichtsrechtsprechung entwickelt, wo eine informelle Ruling definiert wurde. Nach dieser Rechtsprechung des Höhe Bundesgerichts sind die Steuerbehörde, eine Kanton oder eine Gemeinde, an die auch ungenauen Auskünfte und Versprechen, die sich eine Person erteilt hat, nur gebunden, wenn 5 Bedingungen erfüllt sind. Also wenn die Behörde hat in der ersten Bedingung in einem konkreten Fall mit Bezug auf eine bestimmte Person gehandelt, die zweite Voraussetzung, die Behörde war zur Erteilung der Auskunft zuständig oder die Person könnte als zuständig betrachtet werden. Die Person könnte die Ungenauigkeit der erhaltenen Information durch die Steuerbehörde nicht ohne weiteres erkennen. Die Person hat die Verfügungshandlungen vorgenommen, deren Rückgängigmachung ihr einen Nachteil verursachen würde. Und die letzte Voraussetzung in der Zwischenzeit, also von der Information bis den Verfügungshandlungen, keine Gesetzänderung erfolgt. Es ist eine Anwendung der Grundsätze von Treu und Glauben und des Vertrauensschutzes von unserer Bundesverfassung, also Principle of Good Faith. Und wenn diese Voraussetzungen vorhanden sind, dann das Ruling ist wirksam, also bezieht sich eine gebundene Rechtsverhältnis zwischen der Steuerbehörde und die steuerpflichtige Person. Es gibt eine junge Mitteilung der eidgenössischen Steuerverwaltung, Federal Tax Authority, von 29. April, also letztes Monat, wo würde gesagt, dass eine Steuerruling die folgende Punkte erfüllen muss. Es muss also die Einreichung des Steuerrulings an den StV, Eidgenössische Steuerverwaltung, erfolgt stets in als schriftlicher Form und nicht mündlicher. Es stellt den rechtserheblichen Sachverhalt in kürzer und auf das Wesentliche beschränkte Form klar und vollständig dar. Die involvierte natürlichen und juristische Personen sind zu nennen, also man muss den Specific Taxpayer kennen und eindeutig zu bezeichnen, wer ist oder wer sind die steuerpflichtige Person. Es enthält eine eigene rechtliche Würdigung in Bezug auf den rechtserheblichen Sachverhalt. Es ist in einer schweizerischen Amtssprache abzufassen, also Deutsch, Französisch und Italienisch, also kein Englisch möglich, weil es keine Amtssprache. Es enthält eine oder mehrere eindeutig formulierte steuerliche Anträge an der eidgenössische Steuerverwaltung und endlich es enthält die erforderliche erklärende Beilage. Wenn wir die zwei Definitionen von Ruling, also zwischen BEPS, Action Plan 5 und unsere von schweizerischem Recht, also von dem Bundesgericht entwickelt, sind ganz ähnlich. Können wir sagen, die Information muss einer bestimmten Person erteilt worden sein, also die Individualität. Die Information muss sich auf einen konkreten Sachverhalt beziehen, Spezialität, also muss individuell konkret sein und kein general abstrakt Sachverhalten vorhanden sein. Man setzt 5 Voraussetzungen vor, also über den Grundsätze von Treu und Glauben und beziehungsweise das Actionplan 5 des BEPS setzt voraus, dass der Steuerpflichtige in der Lage sei, sich auf die Verfügung der Steuerbehörde verlassen zu können, on which the particular taxpayer is entitled to rely. Die Form ist nicht notwendige die schriftliche Form, aber gemäß dieser letzten Mitteilung der STV wird ja erforderlich sein in schweizerischen Steuerpraxisrecht. Welche sind die Kategorien von Ruling, die ausgetauscht werden müssen? Also erstens sind die präferentielle steuerliche Behandlung, also die Sondersteuerregelung. In der Schweiz hätten wir oder haben wir noch bis Ende dieses Jahr präferentielle Steuerregime. Diese würden letzten Sonntag mit einer Volksabstimmung aufgehoben. Es wurde vorher von Altenburger gesagt und ab nächstes Jahr nicht mehr in unserem Gesetz sein. Aber diese Ruling betreffen unsere besondere Steuerregime müssen ausgetauscht sein. Wie werden diese Sondersteuerregelungen gefunden? Sind drei Regeln zu beachten. Die erste, also betreffen nur die Besteuerung aus geografisch mobilen Tätigkeit, also Finanz- oder andere Dienstleistungen, einschließlich wichtig immaterieller Werte, man denkt an IP-Box zum Beispiel, Abweichung der Besteuerungsgrundsätze innerhalb eines Staates, also eine Sonderregime, und tiefe oder null Besteuerungsniveau, also tiefe Steuersätze. Erste Ruling. Den zweiten Ruling sind die unilaterale APAs im Bereich Verrechnungspreise, Transferpricing. Das sind Abkommen zwischen Steuerbehörde und einem Unternehmen, aber nur in einer Stadt. Und der andere Staat weiß nicht, was diese Abkommen oder Inhalt dieses Abkommens ist. Die dritte Kategorie bezieht sich auf die Anpassung nach unter der steuerbaren Gewinnen. Es gibt normalerweise Ruling, die einen Abzug an den Jahresrechnung, Konzernrechnung gegeben sind und die nicht, Entschuldigung, in den Jahresrechnungen oder in Konzernrechnungen ersichtlich sind und diese, ich weiß, zum Beispiel ein fiktives Zinsabzug wird erteilt und diese muss, wenn ein Ruling vorhanden ist, ausgetauscht werden. Es könnte auch sein, zum Beispiel, die neue Abzug, die von der Schweiz letzten Sonntag zugestimmt würde, die fiktive Abzug von Forschung und Entwicklung Aufwendung unter 50% dieser Aufwendung können in einen Abzug gegeben werden. Vierte Kategorie die Betriebsstätte, Permanent Establishment, also das Bestehen oder Nicht-Bestehen einer Betriebsstätte und wie viele Erträge dieser Betriebsstätte zugewiesen worden sind. Fünftes, es geht um die Abwicklungsgesellschaften, also die Conduit Company, aber in der Schweiz sind diese sehr gering, also sollte kein Problem sein. Und dann es gibt eine letzte Vorbehaltklausel, um künftige Ruling zu bestimmen, aber diese werden in der Regel von der OECD oder werden vielleicht in Zukunft von der OECD bestimmt. Wer sind die Empfänger des spontanen Austauschs? Also ganz schnell sind die immediate Parent Company und Ultimate Parent Company, also die Muttergesellschaft und Konzerngesellschaft. Hier haben wir ein Beispiel. Die Unternehmen A ist die Ultimate Parent Company, Unternehmen B ist Immediate Parent Company, Unternehmen B beteiligt die Unternehmen C, Unternehmen D und die Unternehmen E, alle in verschiedene Städte. Es gibt eine präferentielle steuerliche Behandlung in Stadt B. Die Unternehmen B erhält ein Ruling für die Einkünfte aus immaterielle Werte aus Stadt C, D und E von seinen Tochterunternehmen. Und was muss ausgetauscht werden? Also die Information sicher, die Unternehmen C, also die Unternehmen B hat ein Ruling, muss diese Ruling an Steuerbehörde von Stadt A und Stadt C ausgetauscht werden, also auch an Stadt D. Das Stadt E, nicht D, Stadt E muss nicht ausgetauscht werden, weil die Beteiligung erfolgt am 20%. Also es gibt eine Schwelle, mindestens 25% der Stimmrechte oder des Kapital oder wenn eine dritte Person, die mit mindestens 25% an beiden Unternehmen beteiligt ist. Also zwischen Unternehmen B, Unternehmen E muss keine Information ausgetauscht werden über ein Ruling. Was hat die Schweiz getan? Wir haben am 1. Januar 2017 eine Hilfsübereinkommen ist in Kraft getreten, die Straßburg Convention, OECD Convention. In dieser Convention oder in dieser Übereinkommen, Artikel 7 bezieht sich auf den spontanen Informationenaustausch, ist die gesetzliche oder die muttergesetzliche Grundlage für die Schweiz. Und die Informationen werden also nur mit den Staaten, die diese Übereinkommen über die gegenseitige Amtshilfe in Steuersache dabei sind. In unserer schweizerische Recht. Es würde ein Artikel 22a Absatz 1, wo eine gesetzliche Grundlage gibt für die Austausch des Ruling, und dann würde eine Verordnung vorbereitet. Also 3 gesetzliche Grundlagen. Wichtig sind die zeitlichen Aspekte, also Timeline. Für die Staaten wie die Schweiz, also Staaten mit rechtlicher Grundlage, sind die Early Adopters, und die Schweiz ist nicht dabei, und sind die Schweiz eine Stadt, also in eine zweite Moment angekommen sind, ohne rechtliche Grundlage. Also es werden die vergangene Ruling, also die alte Ruling, also jene, die von der Steuerbehörde am oder nach dem 1. Januar 2010 erlassen worden sind und die von Ende 2017 an noch Wirkungen entfalten. Für die künftige Ruling, also sobald eine Ruling ausgestellt worden ist, muss innerhalb von 3 Monaten die Information muss erteilt an die anderen Staaten. Da finden Sie, was oder welche Informationen über ein Ruling das Gegenstand des Spontanaustauschs ist, das Nummer des Ruling, die Identifikation des Personen, Datum, Steuerperiode, welche Kategorie des Ruling betroffen ist und so weiter und so fort. Die Informationen werden von der Schweiz an andere Staaten erteilt, und dann ist wichtig zu sagen, die Schweiz hat eine Netze über die Informationsaustausch im Bereich Artikel 26 OECD Musterabkommen oder den Artikel 5 OECD Convention, Artikel 5 Abkommen zwischen Schweiz und EU oder der TEA mit anderen Staaten. Es gibt einen Artikel im Bereich Informationsaustausch. Wenn ein Staat die Informationen über den Ruling bekommt, dann kann auch weitere Informationen mit den Informationen auf Ersuch fragen. Und kann fragen vielleicht nicht nur Informationen über Gesellschaftssteuern, aber auch vielleicht im Bereich der indirekten Steuer, zum Beispiel Mehrwertsteuer, oder mehrere Informationen bekommen. Also das Spielraum ist größer als das Spontaninformation gemäß BEPS 5. Diese, wir würden, ist eine Repetition, die Information, die ich vorher gesagt habe, in der Schweiz umgesetzt. Aber wichtig ist, dann bin ich fast am Ende, ein Caso, was haben die Kantonen getan? Also hier ist, es gab ziemlich eine Werbung, auch in der Zeitungen in der Schweiz, betrifft hier, es geht um ein Kanton von 26 Kantonen der Schweiz, ist Kanton Schaffhausen, an der Grenze neben Deutschland. Und was haben die Steuerbehörde dieser Kanton getan? Sie haben einen Trick angewendet, aber dieser Trick würde auch von, glaube auch unsere Steuerbehörde im Kanton Tessin angewendet. Also, die Rulings werden aufgelöst, also aufgehoben, und die Besteuerung bleibt gleich. Also keine Ruling mehr zwischen Steuerbehörden und die Unternehmen. Wir werden diese Ruling aufheben. Die Besteuerung bleibt ganz gleich wie vorher. Aber dann, wir müssen nicht als Steuerbehörde die Informationen über unsere Ruling an die andere Stadt schicken, senden, austauschen. so dass die ausländische Steuerbehörden kennen keine Details über die schweizerische Ruling. Es gab eine Kritik oder es gab eine Kritik über diese Methodik. Es war eine Umgehung des Amtshilfeübereinkommens und von Politik auf Wunsch der Konzerne. Weil, wie gesagt, sobald das Ruling am Ende des 2017 aufgehoben wird, müsste keine Information ausgetauscht werden. Also könnte man entscheiden, keine Ruling, keine Information Austausch. Und man sieht hier gemäß also die Quelle ist die eidgenössische Steuerverwaltung, diese offizielle Medienmitteilung, erstmals Übermittlung der Steuerruling. Letztes Jahr wurden die erste Steuerruling ausgetauscht und es wurden nur 82 sind wenige Meldungen an 41 Staaten übermittelt, darunter Deutschland, Frankreich, Großbritannien, Niederlande und Russland. Ich würde sagen, dass viele Steuerruling, wie Schaffhausen gemacht hat, aufgehoben wurden. So haben wir ein bisschen, also sage ich aus Sicht der Schweiz, diese Norm würde als eine Umgehung die Folge dieser Information zu vermeiden. Voilà, ich habe, glaube alles gesagt und stehe gerne für Fragen zur Verfügung.
Danke. Thank you, Samuel. Okay.
Bitte.
Was machen andere Unternehmen, die den gleichen ökonomischen Sachverhalt haben
Ja.
und gleich behandelt werden wollen? Zum Beispiel ein deutsches Unternehmen denkt darüber nach, Betriebsstätte im Kanton Schaffhausen.
Mhm. Weil es gibt, weil die also es bleibt die gesetzliche vorgesehene Steuerregime, bleibt im Gesetz. Aber das Ruling gibt es nicht mehr. Ich habe nicht kann nicht mehr auf eine Ruling vertrauen, aber in der Regel die Taxation bleibt gleich. Und ja, man hat nicht das Vertrauen, also entitled to rely gibt es nicht mehr. Aber aber das Vorteil, dass keine Informationen an deutsche Steuerbehörde ausgetauscht werden.
Es gibt keine Peer Review amongst Kantonen.
Nein, zwischen Kantonen sicher nicht. Wir warten vielleicht auf den Peer Review vom Global Forum, wenn es geht. Aber wir sind in der Regel. Wir haben alles getan. Vielleicht, es würde weniger Informationen. Ja.
Keine Bundeskontrolle.
Nein, es gibt keine. Die Kantonen sammeln die Ruling. Sie geben diese Ruling an die eidgenössische Steuerbehörde, also Verwaltung, und die eidgenössische Steuerverwaltung also sieht die Muttergesellschaft, wo ihren Sitz hat, und dann werden sie auch Informationen tauschen.
Aber letztendlich wird es zu einer zunehmenden Verwässerung vom Steuergesetz führen, weil umso größer ist der diskretionäre Handlungsspielraum.
Ja, aber das Party, Festa, es gibt kein Party mehr in der Schweiz, weil die Steuerregime würden, also ab nächstes Jahr sind nicht mehr in Gesetze und es gibt eine gerechte und gleiche Behandlung zwischen alle Unternehmen. Das muss man sagen.
According to the
According?
to the step up provision.
Step up ist eine,
This is a kind of prohibition for the next 5 years.
ich denke, dass dieser Mechanismus muss ausgetauscht werden, das Step Up, weil ist eine Sonderregelung für die Schweiz, die 5 Jahre dauern werde, aber für diese Taxation muss ein Abkommen zwischen Steuerbehörde und Unternehmen abschließen. Und meiner Meinung, den Step-Up könnte unter eine der 5 Kategorien fallen. Also sicher würde erste Kategorie, weil sie haben noch für 5 Jahre eine Vorteile im Bereich der Bezahlung der Steuer. Weil das Steuersatz bleibt ungefähr wie heute, also zwischen 10 und 12%. Ist eine Frage. Also wie IP-Box Ruling werden ausgetauscht oder nicht? Man auch das Doktrin.
Is this a ruling? Is it a ruling that the IP can be taken into consideration?
Ja, auch die Steuerregime von heute, von all den Gesellschaften ist eine steuerliche Anwendung, aber dann es gibt immer ein Ruling. Vielleicht sie werden sagen, wir wollen kein Ruling, weil dann keine Information ausgetauscht wird. Aber sobald ein Vertrag, können wir sagen, zwischen Steuerbehörde und steuerpflichtige Person abgeschlossen ist, im Bereich erste Kategorie für mich, also ist eine Frage. Also kann ich nicht antworten, ja, es wird sicher diese Information an die Steuerbehörde, ausländische Steuerbehörde, weil dann entscheidet die StV, eidgenössische Steuerverwaltung. Also in Steuerverordnung ist nicht drin.
Can I ask for Singapore? I mean, if a company applies for a tax incentive, a certain kind of corporate income tax, because it brings, let's say, a lot of substance to Singapore, and the substance is very much well appreciated, and so on and so on. Let's say this is a kind of application or something like that. If then the Singaporean tax authority would say yes to that, would you treat that as a review?
So generally speaking, this is quite secretive. You would get is it ruling? I think you could say it is a ruling, but by right, if you look at the tax legislation, because everything is very secretive, I don't think you have a right to that lower rate. It's more of they want to maintain their reputation, and that's why when they give it to you, they will ensure that you are locked in at that particular rate. But I don't think you have the legal right to that particular percentage.
Yes. So you wouldn't consider it as a ruling.
Also
Only because
And the same, I mean, if you are, for instance, a charitable foundation or trust, and you apply for being tax exempt because of your charitable issues, I wouldn't regard that as a ruling, but rather as an application to apply what is in the tax law. And if you fulfill the criteria, of course, you get a kind of documentation. Yes, you fulfill the criteria, and therefore you have a certain tax status, let's say tax exempt charitable trust.
Ich denke, wenn Sie eine Zusicherung seitens der Steuerbehörden bekommen, dann und wir nicht einfach mit dem Gesetz, also die Taxation behandelt, dann ist ein Ruling und muss, wenn unter eine dieser Kategorien fällt, gesendet werden.
Yes, but I think this is much more the interpretation. You get the ruling for a certain interpretation of applying whatever tax law. Because it is not clear, let's say, that you fulfill it or not fulfill it or things like that. But if there is, for instance, an option in the tax law, and you apply for option A or B, let's say having a faster depreciation or something like that, or something like that, then I think it is not that much an interpretation. It's just applying the law, and therefore also you do not rely that much on it because it's obvious that this is the case.
In Italy, we brand them rulings anyway, but we have different purpose. We have ruling for in situation where the application of law is uncertain, so we need interpretation. Other rulings, we brand them ruling when factual situation is uncertain, so the evidence. And then we have also the level rulings when there are foreign relevant investment in the country capable of having a significant impact on employment or unemployment. Those are rulings as well. Even their nature is quite different.
Yes, I mean, your determination of profits is these earnings and these allowances and so on, and the sum is the profits, and this is your basis for taxation. And if the tax authority, if they accept it, I wouldn't name this a ruling. And if they don't accept it, this is even not a ruling. They just say, well, these allowances are not appropriated, they are for private purposes. So
the word is actually abused. Yes, it's a very wide umbrella. Okay. Right. Questions? No? Then thanks again. Okay. Good. And now we switch back to English, and we will not go far away. Well, we switch to English and back to Italy because I can't remember Daniele promised first or Claudio, but I forgot who was first. I think Daniele was the first one, and we are back to the web taxation, but with an Italian flavor.
It's not exactly all about web taxation, but I will explain you in a minute what my presentation is about. So I have some preparatory stuff. So, fine. Here it is. So my presentation is actually about value creation. So, what is value creation? Is it possible to make sense of this term? So, where does this term appear? Where did it appear? Okay. So, value creation has its origins in BEPS, as you all know. And if you have to summarize a BEPS project in a nutshell, you say a BEPS project is about taxing profits where value is created. Okay, and this idea of value creation then spilled over to other projects, international projects, both national and international taxation projects. I just put the ATED and the UK Digital Service Tax proposal. So they are all about taxing where value is created. But the problem is that nobody knows what value creation really is. And basically, there are two categories of definition. One is a conservative definition that says that value creation is just a reformulation of existing criteria. So it's a reformulation of the source principle. And then there are progressive or radical definitions that say that it is a new criterion, so going beyond the traditional allocation criteria of source and of residence and source. So my research question is, given all this confusion around value creation, given that value creation is the foundational idea of the BEPS project, is it possible to find a consensus on this definition, on this word, on this term? And well, my thesis, my argument is that it is unlikely to be reached because it is a sort of hypocritical definition, because it was a term which was left deliberately vague in order to encompass the possibility of different meanings and different purposes. It was a way to say that the BEPS drafters had reached an agreement on a foundational idea, whereas in reality there was no idea whatsoever. So my argument is, how can you structure such a big project on such a very crumbling idea? Okay, so, but why is it so vague in the BEPS project? Because basically there were essentially two main conflicting views as to the purpose of this project. One was a conservative view of the BEPS project, which is the official view, saying that we need to address a number of tax avoidance practice while at the same time remaining on the current allocation criteria. So this is the first idea that prevailed in the official document. But there was also another view as to the purpose of the BEPS project, saying that the current allocation criteria do not work well in today's digital and globalized economy, and they are rooted in the 20s or possibly even earlier, so they are not functioning well. So we need to go beyond the current allocation criteria. So the clash between these two views and the lack of agreement lies at the core of the reason why value creation is so vague. Okay, so as I said, it was a term that was there just in order to conceal the idea that no agreement was reached on this concept. Okay, so the vagueness of the two purposes of the BEPS project is reflected in the vagueness of the notion of value creation. So, as I said, there is a traditional view of value creation saying that value creation falls within the traditional allocation criteria because it is based on the so-called transfer pricing model. So you have value creation where functions and assets and risks are located. And so this is in line with the source principle. So this notion of value creation is in line with the source principle, whereas we have a radical view of value creation saying that the current allocation criteria that make up value creation are arbitrary, and so we need to look at different factors that are not present in the traditional allocation criteria, such as employees and, more importantly, the market, because the traditional view looks at factors contributing to the notion of value creation that pertain to the supply side, whereas this radical view is focused on criteria that pertain to the demand side, and namely and more and especially the market. Okay, so given this extreme vagueness of the concept, so we find that there are so many factors that contribute to the creation of value that it is impossible to find a common definition, because this notion is largely dependent on the economic characteristics of every single country. So each country will end up picking up the factors of value creation that are more prevalent in its national economy, and will say that value creation lies there. For example, if you have a country which a lot of working force, so of cheap working force, so this country will say value creation lies where the greatest number of employees is. On the other hand, if you have a country with a larger consumer base, so this country will say that the volume of sales lies at the core of value creation. Another country in which there is a lot of IP, a lot of research and development activities will say value creation lies where these activities take place. So this is the reason why you cannot have a common understanding of value creation, because it depends on economic characteristics, and each country has its own economic characteristics. So in the final part of my paper, I will just give an example, two examples of how value creation is addressed in BEPS, and how these two, the clashes of these two definitions of value creation are evident. For example, in the transfer pricing, in the BEPS action plans regarding transfer pricing, actions 8, 10. So these in these action plans there are anti-avoidance rules that are substance over form rules that are based on the FAR analysis, that is to say on functions, assets, and risks analysis. So they try to address situations in which the allocation of profits is not matched with activities or functions of the entity being allocated the risk. So this idea, these rules, stay within the current allocation rules. But if you look at the comments submitted by some Chinese academic, they wanted transfer pricing rules in the BEPS project that went beyond the current allocation criteria. And I quoted this, the comments on the discussion draft on the use of profit splits, saying that the ALP fails to reflect exterior contributions from the markets and the government. So we need to address transfer pricing by relying on the contribution of the markets. So another area in which this conflict of the different definitions of value creation is most evident is the digital economy. So I won't spend too many words on that because it has already been addressed in the previous presentation. But in the field of digital economy, the most important issue is to assess the role of users in the digital economy. And so there is a traditional view saying that in digital businesses are about a transaction between the digital service providers and the users. So you can tackle the issue of the digital economy by simply remaining within the traditional allocation rules, because it is about assessing this transaction between the users and the digital service provider. So you do not need to find new allocation criteria. And this view has been, for example, put forward by Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. So there are these countries say there are no reasons to deviate from internationally established principles. But there is another more radical view, which I would say now is becoming somewhat prevalent, saying that this user participation is a unique and important driver to the creation of value. So we need new allocation criteria to capture this value creation. And indeed, this is the main idea underlying the so-called interim measures that are called interim measure. Again, another hypocritical term to say that there was no agreement, so there was the need to adopt an interim measures, which I really doubt that they will be so temporary. Okay, and so that's it. Given this, these two clashes on the notion of value creation, I think that this term will remain an empty statement, and it is unlikely to serve its deemed purpose of guiding principle on which to design an international tax system for the 21st century. So basically, was my very quick.
Yeah, but straight to the point, I would say. Thank you very much about this. So I would say that value is in the eye of the beholder.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, everybody will read what he wants to read in this concept. So my main argument is, how can you found such a big project on this very crumbling idea, very vague idea? So that is why I believe that sooner or later countries will wake up and realize that it cannot work. I believe that the BEPS project was so successful because of the economic crisis. So there was this urgency to tackle tax avoidance, and because there was a lot of public pressure. But in the long run, it is not tenable because it is founded on this very vague idea. So this is my
questions or comments from the floor. I believe that, and mind you, we've been talking about this some days ago. There is another issue on the table that you, of course, didn't address for time constraints, is that the issue that most of the electronic business rely on the internet, and we still live in the world. We live in the world where the internet access is neutral. So a lot of the value creation through the internet is not properly allocated.
Yes,
Most
so-
of the multinationals have almost for free access to the internet. This jeopardizes in a way the way which value is actually created. As long as net neutrality holds, we cannot access exactly where real value is created. And therefore, it's my very personal view, we cannot tax it properly.
There was a movie, Catch Me If You
You
Can.
can
But maybe it's
Catch
tax
me.
it.
If you can, yeah.
Tax me if you can. This
And,
guy.
no, I mean, I totally agree with you. This is a very not so clear starting point, but this was the case because everybody agreed, and
Yes, there
probably
was.
we will end up in a lot of double taxation because all these possibilities to solve this, they will not work that good as people think, because you put it in not in an allocation of taxes according to the treaty, but you put a lot of things in the determination of the tax base, and this is a very national issue still, and therefore you have just different determinations of tax bases, and many of these payments and so on, they just included in two tax bases, and this is called double taxation. And this is what really makes the cake bigger as it is. And the tax is bigger as it should.
So,
Okay, very quick. So
Thanks,
yeah.
thanks again. And now, Claudio, again, shall I put it? Does the winner take the whole cake, you would say, at this point? So the assessment of European web tax.
Even the artificial one.
Even the artificial, sure.
I suppose I may start. So I would like to thank you all because this day I learned a lot. I thank Professor Greggi for the invitation. I'll try to be as short as possible, so just 5 minutes, go straight to the point. My research starts from a grant that won from the European Court of Auditors, because they were interested in reform of EU own resources, the resources that feed the European budget. So this is kind of spin-off of this research, because European web tax was imagined as EU own resources, because the European Union has powers about the digital single market. And because of this power, they thought about a link with these policies, and this link is the European web tax. Because US multinationals are accused of not paying taxes in Europe, and as you know, nowadays European own resources are a share of VAT, customs levies, and a share of GDP. And the European Court of Auditors is doing some audits about about VAT and the e-VAT especially, because they have some suspicions that these big multinationals are not paying the fair share of taxes. So starting from the introduction, the tax provisions are, according to me, no longer able to capture incomes that increasingly depend on the intangibles and online commerce. We usually say that these incomes coming from the digital multinational are nomadic, are stateless. Tom Godwin said that the world's largest taxi firm, Uber, owns no car. The world's most popular media company, Facebook, creates no content. The world's most valuable retailer, Alibaba, carries no stock. And the world's largest accommodation provider, Airbnb, owns no property. So something big is going on. The lively debate on the subject has made clear that indispensable need for a supranational model of taxation. So as we said this morning, the OECDC is working a lot, is making a lot of effort about this digital taxation. I reported these workings, but there is no final solution. But a final report will be adopted within 2020. So due to this length of international working, the European member states try to set up a European web tax. In particular, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain asked to European Commission for a web tax within that levy the digital sector within the community borders. But according to me, this letter is pretty contradictory, because from one hand they ask for an equalization levy that is adopting some other countries in the world. But from the other hand, they ask for a corporate tax that affects the turnover that is attributable to this to direct taxation on income. So the action of the European Union was is going to pursue two objectives at the same time. From one hand, the sustainability of the member states' budget, because they think that the U.S. multinational don't pay taxes in Europe, and they pay taxes otherwise, or they otherwhere, or they don't pay taxes at all. So there is, first of all, a cash reason, and the second objective is the effective functioning of the single market. So it seems to me that taxation of digital economy is driven more by cash reason, by the serious intent to face the new fiscal challenges. As Daniele said before, we don't focus the attention of what is value created. We are thinking about money, but not what is value. And this cash reason is witnesses, according to me, in the communication of the European Commission that contains some roaring phrases like "it's time to act," or "the time to act has now come." However, the longer it takes to find a solution, the bigger the losses in tax revenue will be. So the solution of the European Commission can be classified in a long-term solution that runs parallel to the work of that project, or a short-term solution, which is a reform of the permanent establishment, the concept of significant digital presence, or the kind of interim tax, or European web tax. About the PE, the permanent establishment, the European Commission tried to identify three elements. The subjective elements, that is the revenue and number of users and number of commercial contracts that you could read in the slide. Objective element, which is the provision of digital services, which are just said in the proposal of European directive, but it's not. It is a non-exhaustive list of digital services. And then there is a territorial element, which is linked to the Internet protocol. But the European Parliament proposed some amendments, and for example, the European Parliament would like to enlarge the objective element to the online sales of goods and services. So think about Amazon. So in this case, we are not clear what is permanent establishment and in a particular way a significant digital presence. Going on, the interim web tax was the proposal of the European Commission, especially during the new cycle of a financial budget 2021-2027, because the European web tax should feed the European budget. So an interim tax is a temporary tax on revenues deriving from digital services to be applied to the extent of 3% to companies of significant size. Showing faster, a lot of literature have questioned about what is this DST, these digital service taxes. So it is impossible to read all the literature because there were thousands of papers about this subject. So it isn't clear what is this European web tax. Is it an excise tax? Is it an indirect tax? Is it a kind of Italian IRAP? So according to me, what is astonishing is how the European Commission is unable to identify an imposition that can capture the digital phenomenon and bring out its relative taxing capacity. So the European proposal, in fact, is wavering between the use of form of direct taxation through the identification of a permanent establishment with foremost indirect taxation, which is the DST. So the introduction of DST could result in double taxation risk, as digital companies would be subjected to both the digital tax and the ordinary taxation in the states of residence. So the solution to this problem can certainly not be traced to a whereas of the proposed directive establishing the DST, in which a deduction from the tax base of the national corporation tax of the tax paid is just hoped. We analyzed the proposal of France of General Money about digital advertising tax, but it isn't found on an agreement on this subject. So I tried to do a comparative research of how member states are acting about the digital taxation, and I found out that perhaps there could be a least common multiple, because despite the difficulties to get to a shared European web tax due to the principle of unanimity between member states are slowly introducing in their legal system different kind of taxation, which are some way linked to the European web tax proposal concerning the identification of taxpayer, taxable object, tax base, and the territorial application. Well, start from Italy. Italy has introduced its own web tax since 2017, which has changed several times indeed, and until December 20, until the last December, when the new formulation makes it similar to the European web tax. The taxpayer of the Italian web tax is the company that meets both of these, the condition that you could read. However, the Italian web tax has not still entered into force, waiting for the implementing decrees. Even Spain is working to build a web tax, which is similar to the DST, Digital Service Tax, that is the European web tax, even though the total amount of the taxable revenues obtained in the state max exceed 3 million. Instead, in Italy, we have 5.5 million. And the Spanish web tax is deductible from the corporation tax. As far as concerned, in April, so last month, the Parliament voted for a specific law regarding the web tax, which will levy the so-called GAFA, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. In this case, the total amount of taxable revenues concerning digital services obtained in the state must exceed 25 million, and the expected revenue is about 4-5 million, not few. And the tax should apply retroactivity from 1st January 2019. Maybe Austria is going to introduce shortly a web tax which is closer to the DAT, so we levy the online advertisement. The Austria tax is expected to come into force in 2020 and be supported by an anti-avoidance rule that provides for new reporting obligation to the Austrian tax authorities on commerce platform. Even the UK is working on these web tax. But in other countries, such as in Denmark, in Sweden, and in Germany, the debate about web tax has started, but there are no specific details on this topic. While Netherlands, Ireland, and Luxembourg are against web tax. So, according to me, long story short, it could exist a kind of a least common multiple of web tax, which is close to the DST or the DAT proposal. But the difficulty, the impossibility to reach a unanimous consensus of member states needs that there is no European web tax so far. So, failure of the negotiation during ECOFIN summit could open door to the enhanced cooperation in the field of taxation. But the substantial failure of enhanced cooperation during the financial transaction tax leads to reflection on whether it is really the best institutional tool. And nowadays we are talking about the FTT, the financial transaction tax, because it is hoped that this tax will feed the Eurozone budget. So, according to me, it is imaginable that in some ways the EU could reach consensus on a common approach before the G20 summit in Japan, in Osaka. Last week, during the ECOFIN, ministers assessed possibilities to prepare negotiation in the OECD on ongoing international debate on long-term comprehensive solution addressing both the challenges of taxation, the digitalized economy, and the broader issues related to allocation of taxing rights and the tax competition. The medium-term solution is the CCTB. The CCTB has a lot of limits and is not a structural solution to tax the digital economy, because the CCTB has a limited scope because it is mandatory only for large multinationals. And the definition of permanent establishment in the CCTB follows the one that currently is applied internationally. But the European Parliament approved the proposal of the European Commission and advanced significant amendments in order to establish equality between a physical permanent establishment and a digital permanent establishment. So, probably the most important amendment is the last point of this slide, because the digital phenomenon also extends to the formula, for allocating the taxable amount of the CCTB, which, in addition to assets, labor, and sales, will also take into consideration the so-called data factor, that is the collection and use of personal data of online platform and service users. So, coming to the end, The proposal of Europe about the reform of permanent establishment seemed to be hasty, as evidenced by two different definitions of PA between European Commission and the European Parliament. The sharp acceleration set by the European Union through the creation of the European web tax appears to be an initiative mainly driven by cash reason, despite the hopes aimed at introducing a fair taxation. And probably the drafting of the provision of the European web tax was carried out bearing in mind a very precise objective, which is to hit the US companies. And so the European web tax presents inevitably assonance with a customs levy. And also Professor Greggi wrote something about this subject. So the European proposal, according to me, do not hit the target, aimed at bringing out a new index of ability to pay. So, despite the difficulties to get to a shared European web tax, member states' tax on digital economy are some way linked to the DST, digital service tax. So it is possible to highlight the least common multiple of this national web tax, which form a sort of European model of taxation that could be asserted within the BEPS project. So I will stop here.
Thanks, Carl, for the presentation. Questions from the floors or comments?
Very quick explanation. The European Union seems to be acting on a multi-level basis, because it's also on a substantial way, as you described. But I was also looking into the proposal of mid-January to change the procedural rules without changing the treaties to overcome
the passerelle clause.
Exactly, to overcome the unanimity requirement. I don't think there is, it's not likely to succeed, but the proposal said that one of the purposes of the roadmap is to also make it easier to achieve digital service tax or the CCCTV at the European level. So, who knows?
Yeah, indeed, as far as I know, the member states have expressed their opposition to the use of this passerelle clause. So also in this case, there was no unanimity. And so because of this rule, which is used in the tax sector, but also in the own resource field, so it is difficult to get to a solution. So also this effort is a failure.
I had one comment or questions. So it appears that we have a kind of dilemma. We have the example of Chile that Rodrigo described out there, very successful apparently in terms of last year in terms of digital taxation, because the innovation they were able to grant or to give to the tax administration. Or we have this comprehensive proposal by the European Union, or you also mentioned the enhanced collaboration between qualified countries within the European Union, but also you added during your presentation, we had one example of this, which is the financial transaction tax, but that was not that successful. So my question is that none or unsuccessfulness is of the tax or of the method. I mean, you do not believe that is the right approach, because the method of the enhanced cooperation is not fit for digital taxation, or because of the structure of the tax as such.
Well, we could talk about this question for hours. But according to me, there are two answers, because the web tax is think about US companies. So as Daniele said, we are not talking about what is value, what we should levy. we are talking about turnover, we're talking about transaction, but is it the real key to levy the digital economy? So the web tax is a question too. And the second point is that the principle of the unanimity is blocking, is stopping every possibilities to have a harmonized system or even a European tax. Because on Sunday we will vote. So everyone knows that the European Union has a budget. So everyone knows about, especially in the south of Italy, it's my place of birth, we say we want more money from the European Union. But no one knows how to feed, how the EU balance is fed. So it seems to me that a European web tax, also a European tax, could be an instrument to make accountability. It is especially we are talking about. It's important to talk about European taxpayer. So because we are a European, so if we want to get closer from states, we should have at least a common tax.
So, but if you will allow me to play devil's advocate, you say, well, we are in need of more money, but you in this way you are invoicing the Americans for the more money. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think they will agree that much, but
so yeah. In fact, as Professor said, the cake is not growing.
Okay,
so
sure, Martin.
Probably now US is eating the best part, the biggest part of the cake. So the European Union said, "Me too, I want the cake too." Okay. So maybe that's why the European web tax is thought in contrast with the US tax, according to my modest opinion.
So we have to move from the Oliver Twist approach more to something else. Yes,
but probably you are aiming at companies, but you will target consumers.
Yes.
In the end, so.
Yes, the effect of the consumer is just one to pay.
That the service will be much more expensive on the consumers in this respect.
And so you have the competitiveness of services which are given in the EU compared to services by other countries that don't use.
Yeah, that's true.
I believe that probably the impact would be asymmetrical in many respects within the union, within the common market. And yes, you are absolutely. There is a pricing effect of this.
So because you have decreasing marginal costs on the production side, and you have a very price elastic demand, and then it's a question of tax incidence that again who pays it. And I think from an economic point of view, I think the problem starts with our understanding of like the theory of firm, because we have in mind that there is a firm, but value creation today is the boundaries is not anymore firm. The boundaries is further. If you think about Facebook, you have the users who provide content. If you think about Airbnb, you have Airbnb, but you have the local host. If you think about Uber, you have Uber who provides the general framework, but you have the taxi driver who owns the car, and you can continue with it even if it comes
actually it's a platform for sharing.
Yeah,
this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not the
and what is the firm, and probably if you would like bring it back to the traditional concepts, you have like a joint production function between the users of Facebook. They deliver one axis and Facebook the other one, like technology or capital and labor.
In fact, in Oxford, the Professor Devereux calls them prosumer, producer, consumer, or pro-user, producer and user at the same time. Drawing distinction boundaries is not that relevant. It's always an uncertainty. And Claudius right, and decision in this area has side effect in terms of pricing or mispricing that.
And then if you take one input factor, like taking Facebook, then what will happen in a neoclassical framework on relative prices? So, and what would be the impact on the consumer?
It could be also a regressive tax, for example, because it's an indirect tax, and it might be also regressive, for example. So we should focus on these topics, but nowadays, as I said before, the target is different.
This is of course not relevant in the debate, but in this country, this side effect we're seeking, because as you may know, there are actually one very large monopolist of advertisement in Italy, which is controlled by former Italian politicians, and now is pushed out of the market because of this multinational can provide advertisement in a much better way compared to the classical, like newspaper, television one. And so they were saying they were very featured in promoting this stuff because they didn't want distortion, because in this way we are back on the market like we were before against this giants. So that's another reason why. So your concern is right. You say, well, if you trigger a tax like this, the side effect will be significant. But this is intentional for some of the businesses in this country.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments from the floor? No comments. That's it. Right on time, I would say. Concluding remarks, half an hour. I will use 30 seconds because I'm bad at making presentations, and I'm even worse at drawing conclusion. It has been an amazing day for me. I hope it was for you as well. You came from all the corners of the world, which is correct in this way, because we have people from Asia, from America, and from Middle East in a way, and Europe, and all around the world. It has been amazing. It has been, in my view, great. I'm very grateful to all of you and to each one of you, Daniele, Vincent, Nelly, Rodrigo, Claudio, and all the others, those who joined, Chiara, of course, this afternoon joined, and Tanya, and Mark as well, that took so much time from another much more important event that is going on in these days. Please say that you're what, I'm so sorry for this, but we had to do this event.
Well, a good excuse to come to this.
Okay. I feel somehow responsible for this, and of course, Tanya, thanks again for arranging the whole thing, all the project, all the context that you have been doing in these days and in this week. I really, I'm very, very grateful, and the whole department and the university is grateful to you as well. This is just a farewell, because we are going to have another event next year in Vaduz, I think.
It will be in February, and I think that we will set up a mailing list. So if you would be interested to participate actively, or like your own presentation, or just attending the event, you are very welcome. And we will keep you updated.
Yeah, now I have a mailing list. It will be updated about the next step in this direction, and that's it. Thanks for the materials. Thanks for the presentations. We are quite active. I haven't got a lot of connection on international review, but we have Studium Juris, which is a very important Italian reviews. So if you consider to publish your paper in Italian, if it's not in Italian, it's in English, we can help and translate into Italian. So there is this opportunity in order to make the most of the time that you spent making the preparation for this occasion. That's it. I promise to keep it as much short as possible. And that's it. Thank you very much again to all of you.
No, thank you.
It was a real pleasure. It was a real pleasure. Okay, you're free. I can.